Ferry。Dr. Bill Ferry 咧，佢係 URS Corporation 嘅副總裁，佢就噪音方面咧做緊環境研究嘅。
Mr. Lowen, good afternoon. I'd like to provide now a very brief update on the progress of the aircraft noise impact assessment. Like most international airports, Hong Kong International Airport has adopted a cumulative average noise energy metric for its noise planning. And they use the noise exposure forecast. It is a cumulative average noise level over the course of a year that it's estimating. The criteria used in Hong Kong is an NEF of 25, and as you'll see in this graph, it is among the most stringent criteria in use for international airports around the world. A little bit of information about the noise exposure forecast that is good to understand is that it takes into account the fact that aircraft noise at night is potentially has a higher impact, is more annoying to people than aircraft noise during the day. In fact, in this model, each flight that occurs during a night period of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. is treated as 16 to 17 flights. So, as you can see in the graph at the bottom of this graph, if an airport has 1,000 movements a day and only 150 of them occur during the nighttime period, that 150 flights is treated as more than 2,500 flights. And what that means is we pay a great deal of attention in our studies to activity at the airport that occurs during the nighttime period. The proposed through-runway system would operate such that the new third runway would be primarily used for arrivals. The existing north runway would be used primarily for departures, and the existing south runway would be used for both arrivals and departures. Importantly, at night, the numbers of operations go down pretty substantially at any airport, and including Hong Kong. This gives the airport the opportunity to use that period to do maintenance on the runways, so that runways can be closed, to clean debris, fix lights, do those kinds of things that have to be done to each runway each week, and it can be done in a rotating basis. One of the key assumptions of our studies and of the planning for this new runway is that the south runway, the existing south runway, would normally be on standby at night in order to reduce noise impacts on Northland Tower. The development of new approaches and departures, flight tracks in and out of the airport, has to take into account the existing tracks. It has to be done in concert with those tracks, which are set up by the alignment of the runways. In this graph, the existing flow on the east are shown in blue, and the proposed new tracks that would be used for the proposed third runway, are shown in red. And you can see that on the approach, all those tracks have to be parallel. It's even more evident when you look at the west flow. When the wind is out of the west and the flow is to the west, you can see that that approach to the north runway, which is being used for arrivals, has to parallel the existing flight tracks into the existing runways. Now, the process of the noise study is fairly complicated. At first, you need to generate a forecast, not only of the number of aircraft that will be flying into the airport in the future, but specifically what types of aircraft and how many of each of them will be flying. You also have to study the flight tracks and develop in concert with the air traffic controllers the assumptions as to which flight tracks are going to be used for which runways at which times during the day, during the night, and over the course of the week. To do this, you study the existing radar tracks, existing noise monitoring, and all of this input information, which is a planning process, feeds into the noise modeling and creates a set of assumptions which go into the scenarios that we model. Those scenarios, when the calculations are done, generate the contours. contours, the noise contours of projected noise levels. We analyze those, we go back, we tweak the assumptions, and we do it again and again as we investigate various ways to better manage the noise levels around the airport into the future. Very importantly, every time we do that, we have to go back and re-coordinate with the people who did the planning, air traffic, the airlines, on the assumptions as to which aircraft will be here in the future, which flight tracks, which procedures can be done. And so that's an iterative process that involves many players. A little bit about the forecast. It was developed by the International Air Transport Association Consulting, IATA. In addition to using their database, which is very comprehensive, they did surveys of operators at the airport representing almost 70% of the movements at the airport. So it's a very robust forecast, and it extends out beyond the year 2030. Important from our standpoint in the noise modeling is that under the two-runway system, which would exist up until 2022, the maximum number of operations at the airport on a daily basis is 1,200, or a total of 420,000 in a year. Once the third runway comes into existence, the daily maximum goes up to 1,800, with a total of 620,000 operations for the year. And that's one of the inputs into the noise model. The second is the output from what we call the Total Airspace and Airport Model, or TAM. This is a simulation of airport operations. It's a computer simulation of how aircraft arrive and depart, in which you can study spacing between the aircraft, how quickly they can get in, various profiles. In this simulation, you can see in blue aircraft arriving on the north runway, and in yellow aircraft departing on the center runway, and aircraft both arriving and departing on the south runway, which would be the normal operating mode during daytime hours. Similarly, again, this is showing the movement of the aircraft on the ground. They're arriving on the north runway, they depart on the center runway, they both arrive and depart on the south runway. Importantly, you'll notice it includes taxiing to the gates. Part of the development of how many aircraft how many movements you can have is how quickly you can get those planes to the gates and out to the runways. For the noise modeling itself, we use something called the Integrated Noise Model, developed by the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration in the United States. It is internationally accepted. It is used at many airports in the world and has been used in Hong Kong for many, many years. Importantly, we are using the very latest database and version of that model, which was released only 3 months ago. And so we are incorporating the very most comprehensive information about aircraft that are projected to be in use here in Hong Kong. The way the modeling works, the model takes into account the runway location, the fleet, what the aircraft are going to be, the daytime operations, the nighttime operations, which runways they're going to operate with, which arrival and departure tracks they'll use. It combines that information with a big database that has very specific information about how much noise each of those planes makes, taking off, landing, in cruise, power, flap settings, all those conditions that affect the noise out of an aircraft. And from that calculation, the computer then generates, over a series of hours, the set of NEF contours that we study. A little bit about progress of where we are. The airline survey has been completed, and we've established the basic forecast in terms of numbers and types of future aircraft. The initial TAM simulation has been done so that we have an understanding of how the airport will operate. That information has been fed into the INM. We are running and continue to run INM models at the current time, and we are using the preliminary results to investigate a variety of mitigation options. In considering mitigation as part of total noise management for the airport, flight safety is paramount. You cannot implement any kind of a process that will endanger flights and the safety of passengers. Other things we need to look at is wind direction and velocity so that we can tell how much flexibility you have in which runways you use. How many planes are arriving and what the capacity is with 1 runway, 2 runways, and 3 runways. That is affected by the runway maintenance. You've got regional air traffic, you've got other airports in the region, and the operations in Hong Kong need to take into account that there are operations in Shenzhen, Macau, other places where there are aircraft, and the controllers need to consider all of that. We've got terrain around the airport that limits some things, and importantly, the international scheduling. Many of the flights into Hong Kong are in the air for 13, 14 hours. They take off someplace that may have its own noise constraints. And so building their schedule into your schedule so that you're meeting criteria at both ends is an important part of the process. The mitigation measures, as I said, have to ensure safety. One of the key ones, which is inherent to all our work right at the current time, is when practical, the south runway will remain on standby at night to reduce the noise impacts to Northland Town. We're also looking at the potential to restrict older, noisier aircraft from operating at night, specifically night because of the way the model works. One of the other concepts that's under investigation is termed tidal flow or preferential runway. And under this condition, when you have light winds, and you can use either direction on the runway safely, and there are more departures than arrivals, you would take off to the west and arrive from the east. That would put more of your flights over water and less flights over land and populated areas. Similarly, when the winds are light, and you have more arrivals, which occurs at a different time of the night, you would turn your runways around, operate to the east, putting more of your flights over the water, and fewer of the flights again over the populated areas. That's the end of my presentation.
多謝 Dr. Ferry。下位講者係